They're also very cautious because they don't want to get things wrong in terms of regulation. And they're also very mindful of managing their risk. Both their internal stakeholders and financial supervisors are very concerned about potential risks to financial stability coming from a very intensive use of third-party technology across financial services, not just cloud. It's particularly cloud, but not only. And what I'm really happy about today is having this opportunity just to share some thoughts around DORA, not in any shape or form claiming that we have solved it or cracked it. I think it's still very much a long-term endeavor for everybody. We've definitely made a lot of progress, and we've learned a lot through the work that we're doing with clients and partners, including CSA. But going forward, there's still a massive amount of work to be done. And this is, I think, maybe just the greatest learning is the mindset shift, which is it's not just a project where you have a start date and a finish date. The thing about operational resilience is that it's never, ever done. It's a commitment to continually getting better, continually being willing to be a bit uncomfortable, anticipating disruption, wondering about what threats could cause problems, and trying to figure out how we all as an ecosystem can manage our individual interests and also enable each other to be successful. So I'm just going to bring up some slides just to talk you through this a little bit. Second minute. And I think this is, I start with this a lot. For me, this is really the starting point of everything. It's a willingness to accept the reality that at some stage, no matter how robust something might be, everything breaks. And it's not about pointing a finger of blame at anybody. It's just a reality. Even with the best intentions, at some stage, things happen that we haven't planned. And being willing to embrace that and say, we need to be able to anticipate and respond and recover no matter what, and it shouldn't scare us. We just need to be willing to be uncomfortable. And there's a huge cultural element in this. Certain organizations are more willing than others to hear the good news or the bad news of difficulty and problems. And I really encourage leaders to communicate to their teams that this is the mindset, this is the kind of the guiding principle going forward, and that we will all be much better equipped if we're willing to acknowledge that sometimes bad stuff happens, things do break, but if we plan for it and organize ourselves properly, we can always emerge from it quite successfully. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on the pillars per se. My remark mainly on this is anecdotally, my observation from the work I do in the industry is to say that the programs that seem to be delivering the best results and the most value are the ones that go deep on each pillar, but they are tightly coupled, in that there's not a siloed approach to each pillar where it's been delegated to teams who don't know each other, where there's not much communication, where it's being run in parallel but very separately. More and more, what I'm observing is that when programs are coming together and where organizations are beginning to get more comfort and feel more value from the investment they're making in DORA, these topics are being dealt with by subject matter experts in a way where I say they go deep because it's necessary, but they also go across. And they talk to each other, they share information, they share learning, and the investments and the progress that's being made in each pillar is mutually reinforcing across the board. So that, I think, is the key message here. Is it's tempting to chunk it up and make everything separate, but anecdotally, It's proving to be more impactful to actually run this as a very cohesive, holistic program. Now, another thing that I've observed is that people are understandably feeling overwhelmed. It can feel like a very, very complex topic. And the human response is to go, oh, how do we simplify? Where do we start? My best advice, again, from projects that I've done myself and from a lot of conversation with people in the industry, is to say, assess what you've already got, where you're good, and accentuate that. Don't overly focus on the gaps unless they are identified as critical, unless they are really exposing you to potential harm. A good place to start so that you can get people on board and show progress and rally people's motivation is to give people hope almost by accentuating where you're already pretty good. But there is a but. Be honest about the gaps. Everybody has gaps. There is no shame in having gaps. The whole point of what this initiative around DORA is aiming to do is to drive clarity about where the gaps are and prioritized remediation so that we're not aiming for perfection across the board. It would be both unattainable and not necessarily very useful. What we're going for is a really pragmatic, risk-based approach, and to use the language of policymakers and lobbyists, something that's proportional. So not going overboard in terms of raising the bar so high that it just seems we're never going to reach it, but to look at each one of these areas and to say, where are we? What are we already pretty mature on? And for the things where we're not so good, how could we structure a program so that we can make incremental progress? We're not breaking our teams because it just seems too hard and too much. And how can we actually make sure that this is tied to the business in a way that the investment makes sense? And it's not just cybersecurity or resilience for the sake of cybersecurity and resilience. It really is tied to the business. Now, just to give you a little bit of insight in how we've been thinking about this. Clients, users of public cloud services, they're still accountable and responsible for their own compliance. That's not something that can ever be transferred. You know, if you kind of look at the sort of the shared responsibility model, the who does what, if anything, is getting clearer and clearer. And what we've been saying to ourselves is, where can we position ourselves for the greatest impact in terms of enabling our clients to do what they want to do with cloud? They have to take care of compliance. They have to take care of managing the regulatory expectations that are in DORA. But fundamentally, they're trying to modernize their businesses. They're trying to delight their own customers. They're trying to be profitable. As real partners, how can we position ourselves in that paradigm? And what we're seeing is that financial services firms, when they're working with any kind of partner, what they want is to be empowered to bring digital technologies into their own business. And where they can, they want self-service capabilities. They want automated tooling. They want to be able to do things by themselves, and a good partner will help them do that. What they also need is support with managing their own risk and making risk-informed decisions. And a lot of that comes from having access to comprehensive documentation, descriptive documentation that will give them the answers that they need in terms of assessing, if we move off premise and into a cloud environment, are we changing our risk posture? And again, clients love to be able to ask that question and get the answers from documentation that's made available to them that they can go through in their own time, extract what they need. And that's something that we're, again, uplifting, is looking at the documentation that we have available, applying a fresh lens to it and saying, if we were a financial services client and we had this problem statement, what would we expect to find in the documentation? And sometimes it's just a slight tweaking of the language. Sometimes it requires a greater level of detail. But again, a really important enabling capability. And the last one is having access to people who are able to understand when there might be a very particular bespoke requirement about a highly sensitive workload or a requirement about data localization, something that requires a deviation from what is otherwise standard. And in that case, mobilizing our engineers, our regulatory experts, because what we're finding is that it's very rare that any single team has all of the answers to these problem statements. It really requires broad collaboration. And I think what we're finding on our side in IBM is replicated and reflected in what firms themselves are finding. There's a whole new level of collaboration between different skill sets, people who may not know each other, people who may not have needed or sometimes wanted to collaborate with each other up until now, to come up with a really sustainable outcome-oriented approach to this particular topic of resilience. It's very much a team sport. It requires risk and compliance and legal and product teams and business teams, all of these people coming together, sharing their perspective. There's often quite a lot of friction initially in those conversations when people start to get to know each other, understanding each other's perspectives. But that's part of the learning that I think our sector is going to go through over the next months, possibly even years, as we all try and figure out where we sit in relation to each other and how we can all manage, again, our own interests while at the same time making the sector stronger.
And may I have a question, please?
Of course.
When you were talking about documentation, are you referring to internal documentation that our customers might have, or documentation, or meaning the banking sector in this case, or documentation that we might find elsewhere? I don't know, generic publications or the law itself, or
it's primarily what I'm referring to there would be descriptive documentation about how the cloud provider is architected and operated, how we manage our own compliance, how we manage security, how we think about risk, so that when clients are trying to evaluate and assess what it means in terms of their own risk of moving to the cloud, they have the answers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so our documentation. And when you said that different people coming together and working now together, would they also, or the departments, would they also bring this documentation, or is just about our documentation in connection with the customer requirements?
What will typically happen is that, so the documentation that I'm referring to here is very much linked to the cloud services. Right now, there's a separate set of documentation which could be contractual, for example. And that's also a really good example of where there is a crossover of expertise. So lawyers typically will be responsible for drafting contracts, but to make sure the contracts reflect operational reality, there's an interaction with the product management teams, for example. And it's that kind of cooperation and partnership, which is happening also in financial services firms, where operational teams, cloud engineering teams would be saying, well, here's what it looks like on the ground for us. And they could be talking to their own legal and procurement teams, explaining to them what might need to be in a contractual agreement so that it reflects the operational need. It's just that kind of bi-directional flow of information and expertise, where specific skill sets take care of particular tasks and they have ownership of them, but they're informed by different stakeholders. And it's the combination of all of those different stakeholder groups and that shared expertise that makes something fit for purpose.
Thank you.
Now, the thing, just there's a slightly tongue-in-cheek message on this slide as well, which is DORA doesn't say that technology providers have to be delightful to deal with, right? It does put certain obligations on technology providers, but how a provider shows up is a choice. And the posture that IBM has always had in relation to customers is we want to be at the heart of helping our clients solve the toughest problems. So our role here and the behaviors and the assets that we're rolling out are all sort of calibrated against that, the desire to help our clients solve their toughest problems and achieve what it is they want to achieve for their business. But there's nothing in the regulation that says you have to behave like that. And what I do try and say to people is that there's an opportunity in DORA for us to, in addition, I think like the baseline is having to respect what the regulatory text says, but around that there is a wrapper of choice which allows us to determine who we are for each other in terms of provider and client, and then the relationships that exist into the wider ecosystem. And I'm just really encouraged by how our internal teams are kind of rallying around this, and what I'm seeing as well in the industry, the fact that we're even having this discussion today, coordinated and championed by CSA, that's the kind of ecosystem collaboration that's really, really powerful. And I'm really hopeful that we're going to see more and more of. Now, one of the things from an operational perspective that is proving a little bit challenging is that we as a technology provider take security and risk and compliance very seriously, and we always have. So this is just a representation of how we manage ourselves, right? So from our sort of the SaaS applications through to the physical data center and the infrastructure that we have, just a representation of how we harden it all so that it's fit for purpose, it's robust. What we're noticing is that clients will sometimes come to us and they'll ask us about this. And it's not that it's irrelevant. It is absolutely relevant. But in the context of DORA, the resilience of a provider needs to be seen in the context of a client's business process. And it's something that's proving really difficult for a lot of firms, is identifying the critical functions, identifying the most important business services, and mapping out end-to-end what that looks like with all the process steps and the dependencies and the technology and the people. And if anything, I think one of the big investments going forward that will pay off, now it's hard, it's a lot of work, but enterprise architecture, investing in enterprise architecture so that there are representations of where technology sits in an organization and how processes look and where value is created, because nothing that we deliver really sits in isolation. And for us to be able to add value to our clients and to help them meaningfully with how they're approaching DORA, we need to understand more and more and in really granular detail where our technology sits on the client side and what business function it's enabling. It could be payments, it could be treasury, it could be mortgage drawdown. But when we're looking at where a cloud service is being used to deliver a for-profit service in a financial institution, that's where the resilience of our technology comes into play. But the collaboration to share the client view is absolutely key. And it can be sometimes a little bit of a difficult conversation to try and bring clients to the point where they can share with us this work, right? When they've identified their critical operations, they've set the tolerances for disruption, they've mapped out all of the resources and dependencies in their business process flow. And then, because it's a cyclical thing, they're testing, they're learning, adapting. And when I spoke about the documentation, for example, that we provide, yes, generic guidance doesn't mean it's not valuable. It is, but we can add so much more value when there is partnership at a higher level of detail in relation to the business focus and the business context. And I think this is going to be one of the pieces of work that the industry across Europe will keep on refining over the coming year, that work around really honing in and prioritizing what is most critical, and what would be the most impactful to a financial institution if there was disruption to it.
May I jump in with the question?
Of course.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I want to ask you, in terms of identifying the critical and important functions and applications, have you seen in practice the business impact assessment being used as well alongside the enterprise architecture as a tool?
Yes, absolutely. I've seen a spectrum of things, right? At the maybe the top end of what I think is the most appropriate and maybe best in class, a smaller number of firms. What I've noticed is that the firms who have managed to carve out a view of what they consider the most of what they consider the most critical, it tends to be financial institutions where there is a head of resilience in the C-suite or reporting directly to the C-suite. And it's an individual who has long-standing experience in that bank or insurance company, and they know the business really well, and they know the IT organization really well. And because they have that insight, they've been able to use their authority and their relationships to actually push the organization to get really disciplined about saying, we'd love to have everything to a gold standard of resilience, but we can't. We're going to carve out this. And even in some really, really big banks, out of everything that the bank does, I can think of one where they've carved out, I think, 30 critical business services. Mm-hmm. And they're focusing on those. And they've done what you mentioned, which was leveraging publications coming from, I think it was the Financial Stability Board in 2013, about the resolution of banks where there was the first level of work that was done on critical functions. They've done business impact assessments. There is a methodology, a framework methodology that is repeatable about how to think about it, how to do it, and what to do next once you have arrived at that short list of services. So yes, absolutely, there is a very disciplined approach. At the other end of the spectrum, there are the firms where the DORA program has been delegated very, very far down into the IT organization. Now, I'm not here to criticize anyone. If I was running a program personally, I wouldn't do that. The reason being is that having C-level support for something like this, I think, is a critical success factor. And the level of the level of visibility and the lens that the IT team will bring to this is tending to focus on the resilience of technical components rather than on the resilience of a business process. And it just means that the granular level of detail, it may not be answering the problem statement. That's the danger with that approach, which is you could test, for example, the resilience of a particular element in a process, but it's not because that element is resilient that your process is. So it is really important to actually get clear about what the scope is. And the other danger is, some people are very risk averse. Some organizations are very risk averse. And because they fear getting it wrong, I've seen certain organizations going, we've just made everything critical.
Yeah, that was actually my next question. In organization that put like 100 critical functions.
Yeah. So my take on that is possibly, but it's unlikely. And just the danger again is it becomes unmanageable. It becomes unmanageable to be able to do the level of risk management, the level of testing, the level of vendor management, if you have that many critical services. And it's about firms really knowing themselves. How do we earn money? What drives our economic engine? If something went down, would it really hurt us, or would it just be inconvenient? And what you'll find is that if you are the owner of a certain functional area in a bank, of course you think it's important. But everybody needs to be able to take a step back and to not have there be negative consequences from you not being a critical function. And I just think that that level of prioritization going forward, proportionality, really risk-based, and having the discipline to know what is critical as opposed to what is nice to have.
Yeah, so look at the bigger picture rather than focusing on each department.
Yeah. And just being really clear that we're talking about the same thing. One of the things I have found useful in projects that I've run, it can sound, like unnecessary effort, but I often just put in place a glossary, a shared glossary of, okay, these words, we use them a lot. What do they mean? And do we all agree on what they mean? Something, for example, like end-to-end testing. We can all think we're using the same words and it means the same thing, and then you're 3 months down the line, you realize, oh no, but hang on, that's not what we meant at all. So just a tip from lived experience, it can be very helpful just to make sure that words that come up a lot, that with different stakeholder groups, we're all aligned on what they mean, and that there is no discrepancy in understanding.
Yeah, very good tip. Thank you.
Yes. Also, I mean, if I may add, we have learned this through the years, that terms definition and setting them in stone, so to say, is very important in any kind of law, when we apply any kind of law. Actually, working on such big initiatives is, or alignment with laws is very important to define and have them written somewhere such that everybody has the same understanding. Yeah.
So just on this, it's not to sort of plug IBM Cloud or try to sell it to anybody. It's just to explain how we've been thinking about it. In terms of no matter what happens, because when we were first thinking about this, the DORA regulation and the texts weren't finalized, and yet we were being asked questions. So the way we were thinking about it was, what can we do and what can we put in place that no matter what will always be valuable, that no matter what, they're always going to help, even if there is a last minute change in what the regulation says. And we approached it in terms of capability domains and an organizing principle, right? So we've got risk management, design, operations, continuity, and recovery. And what we're aiming for with each one of these is a target principle. So for example, with risk management, we're trying to deliver clarity. Clarity in our contracts, clarity in our documentation, clarity in working with our clients about what are the most important and critical functions, that kind of thing. For design, we're always looking to give clients as many options as possible so that they can almost choose their own adventure, right? In terms of the characteristics of their workloads, what is most appropriate for what they're trying to achieve for their business in alignment with their risk appetite. Operations, we're always looking for stability. That's what we're aiming for. However, we're realistic, and to reiterate what I said at the beginning, everything breaks at some stage. Making sure that we are really disciplined, really well exercised, and that we are smart in how we're using both automation and our human people teams, and that's muscle memory. So that's running through exercises. doing tabletops, doing end-to-end testing, those kind of things. And it's a combination of using tooling where it makes sense and making sure that there is really tight collaboration between subject matter experts, practitioners. No tool is ever going to replace really smart practitioners who know what they're doing. Are there any questions on that just before I move into a more focused example of what we're doing?
There is a question in the chat, and I was supposed to monitor those and so it's not specifically, I guess, on that. It's a more, DORA related question. I can ask that now, or I can let you.
Yeah, no, sure.
So thank you, Karina, for the question. So DORA puts a lot of stress on cyber resilience, but in the end, IT resilience is at the bottom of the concept. In your opinion, Anne, should we start with IT resilience and then ensure that cyber resilience is also ensured? Or should we focus only on cyber resilience?
Oh, okay, that's a great question. I have an opinion on this, but I am absolutely open to having my mind changed. So in terms of a conceptual pyramid, my current thinking is that I put operational resilience at the top as the most important target outcome. And I see IT resilience and cyber resilience contributing to that. The reason being is that we can be cyber resilient, but the disruption could come from somewhere else. We could be totally, protected. Well, that's a euphemism, but you know what I mean, against a nation state attack. But there could be a flood, right? So it depends on the lens. I don't like positioning them in a way that says one is more important necessarily than the other. But if I had to draw a framework of it, I would put operational resilience as the blanket to which IT resilience and cyber resilience contribute. But like I say, I talk about this, with experts in the sector. I have a few close friends with whom I disagree, but I'm not, like I say, I'm open to having my mind changed on that. And I can see why certain people come at it from a different direction. So it's an opinion that I hold, but I hold lightly.
So I wouldn't try to change your opinion. I'm exactly of the same opinion on this, actually. So, and I see people saying that you're cyber responsible and your first thought should be security. But no, actually, I'm exactly of the same opinion as you, and I see it operational also. So I won't try to change your mind in that sense. Thank you for the.
So just in the interest of time, I will go through this quite quickly. The slides will be made available, and I'm very happy with my team and my colleagues. If anybody wants to have a deeper dive on any topics, do feel free to reach out to us. We're very happy to follow up the conversation. But this is just a very focused example of how we take one part of DORA, and it's a small part, but it's a really important part, about operationalizing controls so that the risk of moving workloads to the cloud is managed, and also then being able to extend it into the supply chain. So we define a set of a framework of controls, which is known as the IBM Cloud Control Framework for Financial Services. And we implement that across all of our infrastructure. And what it does is serve as an accelerator for clients who are trying to move to the cloud. Often security, risk, and compliance can get in the way of that. What we're trying to do is help clients manage their risk, no compromises on that, and also move fast for their business. So this approach of defining, implementing, and assessing is basically going from what could be paper-based policies into infrastructure as code, and using the output of human-informed analysis around what controls are needed to manage risk in the cloud, and implementing it with automated tooling. And it serves to address the needs and the expectations of a variety of stakeholder groups. So the CISO function, the IT function, and then the compliance, risk and security folk. The framework is a curated set of controls that we've got 6 control types, 7 focus areas, 21 control families. It sort of curates a baseline of controls that, again, that mindset of relevant no matter what. And it just means that, again, in that model of shared responsibility and shared competence, what's driving this from our perspective is what can we do as a cloud provider that will help our clients move faster to the cloud and help them manage their risk when they're doing it. So it's aligned with industry standards. We've mapped, for example, to CSA's CCM, the Cloud Control Matrix. And what it means is that by doing those mappings, we're not suggesting that this is one framework to rule them all. It's infused and inspired by industry standards. It simply curates a set of controls that are embedded into the infrastructure and allows a better conversation between different stakeholder groups, particularly because we have a program in IBM called the ISV, so the independent software vendors who operate their services on IBM Cloud, who sell their services to financial institutions. When they go through a process that we call FS validation, they adopt this framework too. And what it means then is that there's supply chain visibility and parity of controls from the infrastructure layer through to the SaaS layer. And that's one of the big challenges that firms are finding when they're trying to move to SaaS is how do we manage that supply chain? The framework doesn't address all of the elements of third-party risk, but it does really make the alignment of security expectations a whole lot easier. The other things that we offer is deployable architectures, trying to decrease time to production. And again, just these patterns of being able to automate and provide evidencing. And just when firms are going to be asked questions about how are you doing this? How are you managing that process of getting workloads off premise into the cloud? Things like the deployable architectures, things like security and compliance center, they're all really valuable assets to be able to answer questions coming from internal stakeholders and also potentially banking supervisors. As I mentioned, this tool here is one, it's sort of the link that brings together the security, the risk teams, the compliance teams, and into the supply chain. So very, very powerful in offering continuous monitoring, workload protection, and evidencing. So when we show this, for example, to regulators, they go, oh, okay, you've got controls, fantastic. And then when we're able to show that how they're working and how we go from a policy, turn it into policy as code and then infrastructure as code with monitoring, they go, ah, great. Because the thing that's really driving DORA now is trust and verify. And being able as a firm to almost prove how you're doing certain things, tooling like this is invaluable. Now, I'm conscious of time. I don't want to eat into too much of sort of question and answer time, and also mindful of the other presenters. I'm very happy to stop here. I can talk for a little bit longer if there are questions, but I'll take your steer on that.
So we don't have any more questions in the chat. Larissa, if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I had just two short questions. One was, have you seen with DORA a reshaping of the way organizations view the risk register and how this is, let's say, created, maintained, or maybe the content of the risk register?
I haven't any first-hand experience of that recently. I would be surprised, however, if DORA doesn't change that. I be expecting that the presence of third-party risks will increase. And I am hopeful that in organizations where the risk management function is mature and where the culture allows it, that the risk registers may initially see a higher level of serious risks that get remediated. That's probably not going to happen everywhere because it's very culture dependent. However, the level of scrutiny coming from the European supervisory authorities, I think, will drive a change. If it's not driven voluntarily by the organizations themselves, my read of the supervisory landscape is that there will be a strong push coming from national competent authorities, coming from the European Central Bank, encouraging that. And the reason I say it is I've felt it for quite a few months now, but there was a really interesting headline a few days ago coming from the European Central Bank, not related to DORA. It was actually in the context of banking stress tests. But it's the same kind of mindset. And the European Central Bank has very strongly warned the European financial services sector, the banking sector, do not sugarcoat your stress tests. Do not submit information that is overly optimistic. What we want is an accurate view of where you're vulnerable. And I'm anticipating that there will be a very similar mindset in relation to DORA. So risk registers that don't have much in them, risk registers that haven't been updated, risk registers that don't have anything very serious in them, probably will be viewed with a high degree of skepticism.
Fully agree. I was thinking that also the automation part, even the one that you show here for the compliance, can also help in certain aspects with this.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I mean, it's one thing knowing where you're vulnerable. The next step is doing something about it. And I think, there's a real space for intelligent tooling across the board. I'm just showing, the IBM approach to operationalizing controls. But for example, there's a real opportunity to find a way of managing contracts, operationalizing service level agreements, and finding a way to make sure that across that full chain of we planned this is what's happening, and matching the two, and being able to report across the board on that. I'm quite excited to see how the industry gets creative in terms of bringing solutions to that kind of problem statement.
Yes, definitely. We'll hear about DORA probably in the next years as well, until the maturity of the organizations
yeah, for sure,
reaches a certain threshold.
Yeah, we're just starting to see organizations really getting into this, although, yeah, we have already the deadline. Yeah.
And I think that's another one of the topics that I was discussing with a colleague just earlier this week. Some firms brought in consultants to manage the readiness up until January 17th. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. Consultants absolutely add a lot of value. However, in some cases, the consultants have now finished their mission and they've moved on to something else, and there's no run. It's sort of like the project just disbanded. And I'm going to be, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens next. Do these projects, do they get turned into programs that run continually? Is resilience created as a function? and how is it managed? So it's being managed in different ways in different places with a different or varying levels of resourcing and varying levels of investment. Again, I'm going to be really interested to see what approach delivers the best results. But the organizations who are kind of working towards January 17th and thinking, "Poof, okay, now we're done." Nobody's done.
Yeah, it's a continuous process.
Absolutely, yeah.
Super. Thank you very much for your presentation. Very useful, practical insights.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Larissa, I didn't mean to interrupt. Yes,
no worries. I wanted also to thank you for the interesting questions as well, for the intervention.
Yeah, the presentation, yes, it was very interesting. Thank you, Anna.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Sure. Okay.
So now we'll pass to the second speaker for today. So Roxana, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation. It's a great opportunity for me, and also thank you, Anne, for what you have shared with us. It's really, really interesting. Just a short introduction about myself. I'm managing in IBM a banking portfolio on several client business units. In fact, it's a large French international bank who is doing business with IBM in Romania. I work for them since 2014, and in general, I have a very large experience with French clients, and of course, we are trying to align in the best way to what they wish to put in place. Also on the security part, what I have noticed during those 10 years of working for the financial and banking sector is that the client is putting a great emphasis on the security part, audits, compliance, and sometimes it's more important to obey all the security regulation than to deliver projects. So this is one of our main priorities we need to execute without any exception. I try to share also the presentation. If you can see, please let me know. I hope it's fine.
It's perfect. Yes, it's
okay. Thank you very much.
The presentation mode. Yes.
So what I would like to share today with you is a general understanding of DORA framework and of the cybersecurity regulation in general in Europe, cross-regulation harmonization, scope, applicabilities, components, and timeline. And of course, what we have done here in IBM Romania for our client related to DORA implementation. As mentioned before, DORA is setting out uniform requirements for the security of network and information system for companies and organizations operating in the financial sector, but also not direct organization, but also third parties which provide ITC services to those financial institutions such as cloud computing services, software solution, or data analytics service. Just like a general comment, in the past 5 years, we have executed for this client a lot of migrations on cloud. Basically, our client is the largest consumer of IBM cloud services. So they have chosen IBM Cloud as the main provider of cloud, and they are doing an intensive campaign of cloud migration, including modernization, lift and shift. So the I would say the standard PaaS v4 or IaaS DMZR migrations into IBM Cloud, which is also a great opportunity for us, like IBMers, to work on such I would say a friendly solution for us. Going back to DORA, DORA creates this regulatory framework of digital operational resilience, where all the financial entities need to make sure they can withstand or respond and recover from all the ICT related disruption and threats. All those requirements are the same, so are homogeneous around across the European Union, and for all the financial institutions and subsector. The key cybersecurity regulations in Europe, of course, those regulations are mandatory for all the financial institutions, banking, insurance, including the client I was mentioning. The majority are general for the European Union as region, but there are also some specific regulations for Germany and UK. I have put here the list. So for the European Union, the Cybersecurity Resilience Act, aiming to improve the cybersecurity of critical infrastructure and digital products across the European Union. Then DORA, which is the Digital Operational Resilience Act. The key focus is to strengthen the operational resilience within the financial sector, focusing on cyber risk management. So this is, I would say, a framework which use a lot of insights from the financial sector risks. And the EU Cybersecurity Act, which establish the cybersecurity certification and enhance the role of European Agency for Cybersecurity. As mentioned, there are specific rules for Germany, which is Germany IT Security Act 2.0, and for United Kingdom, UK Product Security and Telecommunication Infrastructure Bill. DORA was a thing for those cross-regulation harmonization. as part of the European Union broader digital finance strategy, meaning to have a single market for financial services from a digital point of view. Of course, this regulation is compatible with the previous existing financial regulation. The most, let's say, the most known remain GDPR. DORA incorporates cybersecurity measures that are compatible with data protection, as stated into GDPR regulations for the financial institution, but it also have compatibility with the MiFID2 for the ICT risk management, and also for PSD2, which is the revised Payment Services Directive. It is also incorporate the NIS2 directive, and it is integrated also with the EU Cybersecurity Act and the EU Data Governance Act. There are, of course, global harmonization efforts because DORA aligns with Basel Committee principles for operational resilience with ISO 27001, and also there are some recommendations from the Financial Stability Board. So a lot of efforts to accommodate the existing financial regulation and to be consistent with other initiatives in the European Union for financial services sector. Just a reminder regarding the scope. So there are, of course, all the financial institutions in scope of DORA, including the credit institution, central securities depository, payment, also everything related to electronic money, investment, crypto, credit rating, but also, as I have mentioned previously, DORA is also checking all the third parties provider that provide information services to the financial entities. So it's not only the direct company, but also the third party, which is in scope of DORA regulation. What it's important to say that DORA is built on 5 key pillars, which try to cover all the applicability for this regulation. So the ICT risk management requirements, ICT incident reporting, digital operational resilience, third-party risk management, and information sharing. I have put here also the key components. I will not pass through all of them. Those key components are meant to cover all the resilience standards for the financial institutions, the testing part, which is a significant part of the framework, and I will try to detail a little bit the digital resilience testing, including the penetration testing, vulnerability assessment, stress testing, This is quite important and I would say for the financial institution a mandatory step in order to monitor their IT application portfolio, the third-party risk management, information and intelligence sharing, governance and oversight, supervision and enforcement, and also cross-border collaboration. The timeline for DORA implementation, probably you remember that the first discussions for this regulation started in 2022 when the regulation was approved end of the year and became effective in January 2023. The companies, the financial institution had basically 2 years to prepare and to put in place all the measures to be compliant. And this year in January came into force, and we need to stick to those regulations. In case you need more information, I have put here also the sources which are available. Of course, IBM is paying a lot of efforts to ensure that our clients benefit from our experience related to cybersecurity, to all the regulations, and we have a lot of publishers available to be consulted in case we are having financial customers to help them implement various European Union regulations. I will try to speed up, but let me just take a few minutes to describe the client context. So the 12th addendum, called as DORA addendum, signed at 1st of June last year, was outlining the modification between our client and IBM in order to ensure the alignment to DORA regulation. So we have created an addendum to the security contract to take into consideration DORA. And this addendum extends the existing contract until January this year. DORA is focusing on the operational resilience, and the amendment applied to all the IT services into the contract. And that only services critical to the client resilience fall under the new compliance requirements. Just to give you an idea of the complexity and the importance this client represents for IBM Romania, I can share the fact that we are working for this client with a portfolio of 330 professionals. We are covering a lot of business units of the client and a lot of technologies with teams from Bucharest and Timișoara. Our main focus and our main value resides in providing to the client a high quality of services, including related to the cyber security, in general respect of the OWASP rules, to respond, to have a very low defect rate, to be compliant with the cyber security tools. on a variety of technologies. A lot of technologies we are using are open source, and we need to be very careful related to the security issues. I will skip this. It's only regarding the project evolution. We are delivering a full range of services to create value to the customer. Also, the delivery activities are split into business units, but also into various layers of technology. The majority are Java, web technologies, cloud, which is a big part of the activities, .NET, Oracle, architecture, testing, technical support, but also other services, meaning security services, which are a big part of our activity, risk and compliance. We are focusing for our client on the quality of the services, security, client satisfaction, partnership. Since the very beginning, we have put in place for them a quality plan, which is subject to a continuous reinforcement for our teams. So we are monitoring the code quality by the code audits. We have the SonarQube who is turning on each release, and we need to keep a very good quality of the code. The cybersecurity tools which are implemented full for this financial client, Nexus and Fortify, Nexus IQ and Fortify, they are included in their CI/CD pipeline, and they are turning each time. And before putting anything into the pre-production and production environment, we need to be fully clear from a cybersecurity point of view. Also, the architecture technical standard related to the clear code principle. It is also very important to say that everything we are delivering respect the clear code principle, and this helps also with the security part, testing, and also the technical legacy reduction, which means that the client try to align the application portfolio to the newest technologies. So this is also a way of reducing the cybersecurity threats or attack. For all those type of activities, of course, we are keeping the KPI or SLA in place. But also we have a dedicated DSMP, a team at account level, and also various consultants on the client entities. The security measures of DORA described into the 13th article are putting IBM as a service provider in the position to implement strictly some security measures. So we need to protect the confidentiality or integrity, availability of their data. And basically what we are doing is that we don't have anonymized data outside of the production environment. So we cannot export from production raw data. They need to pass through an anonymization process. Alert the client within 2 hours for any security incidents. This is a procedure put in place. To cooperate, to respond to regulatory requirements, provide supporting during incidents, and also conduct regular penetration tests. I will do a short comment on this, just 2 minutes. As per the segregation of duties for our client, we cannot do directly penetration test because we are also the entity who is practically delivering the code. So what our client decided is to outsource those penetration tests to an external company, so to fully have a segregation of duty. Those penetration tests must be conducted into the pre-production environment before they gave their agreement to put something into production. And there are a set of tools which are being used for the penetration test, like OWASP, Z-Attack Proxy, Portswigger Suite, SSL Scan, used by this third-party supplier to launch the penetration test. Nevertheless, our requirement as ITC company is to pass our code through Sonar and cybersecurity tools like Nexus IQ and Fortify, and also to correct all the bugs related to the cybersecurity of code before the client decided to launch the penetration test. Also, we have launched some sensibilization campaigns for all our developers regarding the OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities. So they are aware that we need to respect those rules and our code to comply with those OWASP rules. Also, for the penetration test, because we are, as a software provider, we are receiving the results and the reports of the third-party supplier for the penetration test in case there are some code-related incidents who escaped from our checks. We know that, for example, for the penetration test, there is a matrix put in place regarding the severity. So they assess the impact mapped on the probability of attack, and the probability of attack is inversely proportional to the complexity of attack. So we also have a matrix who is assessing the complexity and probability of attack. So all those elements are communicated, and there is a complexity put from easy, moderate, and difficult. We also are aware of the rules of the penetration test. We know that all the application and the API are pen tested annually in the production environment. And the client is putting also a sort of list of priorities for the application to be audited into a penetration test. So the process is quite important, and I think this part of conducting regular pen testing is structural for the DORA framework, and something we are very, very careful of. Then the incident and risk management, very quickly. What is ICT incident and what is a major ICT incident? And this is those two definitions, of course, takes into consideration the impact and the critical functions or network touched by the incident. We also have incident management procedure related also to the reporting of the incident. For example, if we detect an incident that could impact data of services, IBM is notifying within 2 hours. Until now, our KPI is green on this part, because we have this consulting team who is managing the part of incident reporting. And also we are providing, without exception, support into managing and solving the incident. As mentioned, security and testing, penetration testing, and we know that the tests are done in compliance with DORA articles, and also the security standard which are in place. I have put here also the new DORA requirements related to the penetration testing, which is done every 3 years for all the applications, and yearly for the priority 4 and 3 application in the case of our client. Audit reports, remediation plans, and reporting. And also the review of what we are, an overview, sorry, of DORA implementation on our client, incident management, penetration, audit and compliance. We are allocating 20 man days for audits. We are assessing the subcontractors under DORA framework, and also the contractors may be subject to regular audits. I think I'm still on time.
Thank you, Roxana, for the interesting. It's interesting to see a use case, actually, how things are done in practice, and with the, let's say, streams of activity, and also the effort that was put by various teams to actually push the project forward. So very, very interesting. I had maybe actually 2 questions. I'm very curious. Did this client or other clients that you have prefer to do more lift and shift from on-premise to cloud, or did they try to rewrite the application to be more cloud native?
It's a very good question. So we have seen different strategies. At the beginning, for each entity, we are starting with an assessment of the portfolio, where the client decided together with the IBM consultants on cloud which type of strategy they wish to adopt. For example, if they have applications out of the shelf application, let's say, it's more like lift and shift strategy. But if the application will perdure a long period of time, and I mean it's an application which is very, very important, and they are seeing a technical legacy, so the application is becoming more difficult to manage with obsolete technologies. They prefer to adopt the modernization. And I think well, they have, let's say, an intelligence architects team at client side. This I need to appreciate. And for example, at the very beginning, they have launched. So before we have started the cloud factories, they have launched some modernizations. Programs, I would say, because the modernization program, I don't know, took 2 years, at least 2 years, with several providers, including IBM. And for example, just to give you an example, they have decided to move to the latest version of Java, implement Spring, or implement Angular instead of JavaScript. So they have invested a lot to have their application up to date with the newest technologies. And then the migration to the cloud was very, very easy. And for all the new enhancements, we are doing them directly cloud ready. So this is one of our main strategy. We are seeing still obsolete technologies and various technologies, but for those, the first reaction is to do lift and shift.
Yeah, super. Yeah, that was mine. Yeah, you answered also my other question of if from now on they build native cloud native solutions and have the CI/CD pipeline in the cloud. Okay, so that's
Yes.
very good to hear from us at Cloud Security Alliance.
Yes.
Super. I'll open the floor if the other participants have any questions.
There are no more questions in the chat. Roxana, if you can take one more question from me, that's okay.
Yes, thank you.
So as we are the provider actually, and I think Anne or you said that there is not only an obligation on the financial institution, but also on the provider. What exactly are our responsibilities as providers, or what can we expect, or what should the financial institutions go to providers to ask for, and what should they expect from their providers?
Okay. Yes, it's a very good question. Thank you very much. So, yes, DORA framework is impacting the financial institutions, but also the third party service providers. And those third party service provider could mean data centers, cloud, and the financial institution has the obligation to have a due diligence before engaging the third party providers. This is for sure. They need to put in place some service level agreements or SLAs and requirements for incident management, resilience testing, for example, to monitor on a continuous basis the third-party providers to be compliant with the resilience standard, and also why not have the right strategy in place to exit from the contractual relation to a third-party provider if DORA regulations are not respected. Yes.
Thank you. So a lot on us to take. Yes,
Yes.
thank you. Also for the financial institutions to be careful which provider they choose.
Yes, yes, yes. It's a very good question, and then us as IT provider, we have also the obligation to check our subcontractors and to respect the same regulations and be well to be very open to the client to provide all the evidences for them.
Thank you. So, Larissa, there are no more questions in the chat, and soon I think my laptop will also die. So I'll let you here to further moderate, but yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so it will be like closing remarks. Thank you very much from my side first. Thank you very much for participating. We look forward to other events as we progress on implementing DORA or on other topics which are relevant to the industry. If you want to say a few last words before we close the event.
Myself?
All of you, one by one.
Or maybe Mircea, who is our enabler here. I don't know if Mircea can hear us. Or yeah. Okay. Anyway, so well, I think we must all prepare for this. We must be prepared. If we have not yet prepared for this, we must all be prepared for this. Financial institutions as well as providers. Every financial institution must be aware of that, must plan the risks, and well, see how they treat these risks, of course. But like with GDPR, we are not getting around that. We will not be able to fool the law, so to say. So for us, it's an important topic, which I think for the moment I don't feel it. I don't see as if it was perceived as burning, but soon, soon we will have the big bang that we had also with GDPR.
Yeah, and
Sure. So I totally agree with that. I think we're at the beginning, and this was going to be a year-on-year effort. What I'm hopeful is that as time progresses and organizations get more comfortable and feel more confident and more mature, it will feel less of a burden and more, this makes sense for our business. That embedding security and having that level of clarity and the level of discipline and operational practices, people will come to realize that security that is pervasive throughout the organization actually serves the business in a very meaningful way, and it's not a tax on the business.
thank you. Thank you. Roxana, if you want to.
Yes, like a general reflection, I think, yes, we need to be very aware of what the technology brings. So we are speaking about cloud Gen AI, but I need to say that the security and the cyber security needs to be embedded everywhere. So we need to start with the mindset of security by design and to be very, very careful what we are putting in front of the client. The cybersecurity attacks, everything changes and changes with a very high speed, and we cannot make jokes with this. It's very important, and it's a structural part for the financial clients. And as I said before, I think for a financial client, the security is even more important than the speed of delivery. It's very important to be aligned, fully aligned, and with zero tolerance for defects. Thank you very much.
Super. Thank you very much. And thank you for your time. And a special thanks to Fernanda for facilitating the organization and the whole process.
Thank you, Larissa, for having us.
Super. This concludes our event for today. Thank you all for participating, and see you in our next events. Have a lovely evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.